Welcome to the C-Level Strategy Series with Jon Arnold. This series delves deeply into the issues business owners and leaders face each day as they operate their businesses in a post-pandemic world.
Good afternoon, panel. Thanks for coming. Barb, once again, thanks for being here. We're starting the second series of the C-Suite Strategy Leadership Series, and thanks again to the Business Journal and Jeff Herrmann. Appreciate your, what you do and your leadership and let me do this. With that said, I want to welcome everybody again, and I can't emphasize enough, please be natural, please be real, please be yourself, and the response to the questions, that's what I'm after, a heartfelt response rather than cookie cutter response. That was very significant in the last series, and people really enjoyed it. And I guess we're going to kick it off, and if you don't mind, I'd like to learn each, for the audience, learn about each of you. And Barb, I'm going to start with you if that's okay. Give us a little commercial about yourself and your organization.
So thank you again for this opportunity. I'm Barb Ewing, CEO of the Youngstown Business Incubator. We're a pretty diverse economic development organization. We're principally known for working with startups, whether that's on the technology side in digital or additive manufacturing, or any traditional small business, but especially focused on women, minorities, and now youth entrepreneurship.
Okay.
We also have a program, a pretty diverse program, to work with existing businesses to help them integrate technology into their operations. So we've done a lot of work with America Makes and other partners like YSU, working with industry to help them figure out how and when to use additive. And we're now starting to look outside of that to look at other types of advanced manufacturing as well.
Wonderful. Mr. Daly?
So John, thank you very much. It's great to be with this panel today. My name is Art Daly. I am the Senior Vice President and Chief Development Officer here at Eastern Gateway Community College, and thank you for hosting it here today. A community college plays an important role in the education of a community, such as our location in Steubenville and Youngstown and our online platform as well. So, we have about 50,000 students nationwide. We continue to grow and find ways to help people get education and attain educational opportunities through our platform. We do amazing things, and not only with our traditional associate degree model and certificate programs, but also we have a large and growing College Credit Plus program that impacts the high schools. And we also have a workforce division that really is growing to find the needs and certificate programs to help people get into a skill quickly and get back out into the workforce very quickly as well. So we appreciate being here today. Appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Holly Swartz. I'm Vice President of Hitchhiker Manufacturing and also Vice President of Personal Protected, which came out of some necessity last year. Our company successfully have taken the hand washing out of public restrooms and for high volume needs, and so we now produce these units as sole provider. We got our patent just as of this week. That was so wonderful, and we're looking forward to being able to serve Ohio first, and then as we're moving outward, it's going to be really exciting to see how we're going to grow in this, because we see the growth already starting to happen. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. We're honored. I believe you'll be able to, especially from a woman in business ownership standpoint, really be effective in the leadership talk in this discussion. I'm Jon Arnold, CEO of the Youngstown Wealth Management Company, a full registered investment advisory firm. We have approximately over 3,300 clients, manage over $350 million in assets, and we're growing at significant levels. With that said, I'm going to start, and this is whoever wants to take it. I'm going to start with a very vague question that I was thinking on the drive here, how comprehensive and how much different the answer to this question is from everybody, is what does leadership mean to you? What is it, if you can describe leadership, if you were to give a dictionary term from your heart, what would that be? And Barb, I'll go with you, always pick on you.
I think for me, leadership means seeing a gap and trying to fill it, and recognizing that there are really important community needs that aren't always being addressed, And instead of the community continuing to do the same old, somebody or a group of people step in and decide that they're going to change things, that they don't like how things are, and they're willing to try to figure out a better path forward.
Okay, Holly?
Leadership, for me, it means listening. It means caring about the people that you are leading. Leading by example has always been said, and I think that's so true, especially when you see a lot of the leaders here in the Valley that inspire me to step into a place out of my comfort zone sometimes, but yet I feel like it's necessary to be able to say, yes, I want to be part of something bigger. And when you're leading people, I think that you also have to look not just ahead and think you're dragging people with you. You're looking, at the people that are with you, and you're bringing them along because you're showing some great examples of what leadership would be.
Okay. Art?
Yeah, and I think leadership, when you talk about it, is very broad in scope because it depends on what you're really looking at and what you're leading to, like creating opportunities, listening skills, getting people on board with an ideal. From an educational perspective, it's showing people a pathway and creating an opportunity for people that may have never existed in their lives, and really showing them the way. And leaders make sure that those individuals are risen up along the way as well. So I think when you look at leadership as an overall concept, there are so many different facets to it. But ultimately what it is taking an idea, to both of your points, getting people involved, listening to what is needed, and then rising people up, and then making that change at the end, or creating something that was never there before. And if that's what true leadership is to me, is taking those people and rising them up and getting to another level that they never thought maybe were attainable before, but really showing them the way and a pathway. And I think that's the true meaning of leadership, is creating just a different idea along the way and bringing people to that idea.
It is funny that each of you have a different line item or scenario of what actually makes a leader, or your version of leadership. And my version of leadership is a lot different, and I won't normally answer my own questions, but I add a little tidbit. I think it's being willing to step outside of the norm, like you talked about, Barb, and being able to achieve what you need to achieve without offending somebody. And that's a fine line. Because one of the things I find, especially in this area, is, the answer is, we've always done it this way. What we have always done it this way has resulted in a 4-decade recession. So maybe my feeling is the leadership on all parties and all colors and all religions, maybe we need a different way of thinking to maybe pull our wagons together and get ahead. And I think that leadership is the same as ethics. What do you when no one's looking, what's the decision you make? The leadership is being able to disagree with somebody that might be your best friend, seeing his or her point, but at the same time say, hey, listen, I know we're friends, but I don't agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying or how we're doing things, but let's get creative and see how we can come together and forge ahead. So I think leadership is the, in my opinion, is the little things. I'm a walking Stephen Covey book. I read them all, John C. Maxwell, Dale Carnegie, and I try to take away little things from all those particular authors and leadership people. But the one thing that stands out with me is, big men make small men feel big. I remember that reiterates all in my head. If someone needs a leg up, if you can give them a leg up, give them a leg up. It doesn't matter what color they are, what religion, what gender, whatever have you, where they vote on things. Really, if that person needs help, help them, and or find a way to help them. So that's my version of leadership. And again, it probably doesn't coincide with yours, but I really value your input on what makes a leader in your book. With that, I'm going to completely go down a different road on the next question, because I believe that we're in a paradigm shift of manufacturing in this country. We're going from gasoline engines and cars to probably the next 20 years, between Europe and the United States at least, going to be 100% electric. And with that is a manufacturing retread. So with that question, Art, I'm going to go with you. What skills are critical for the future of our regional manufacturing workforce? And ironically, this relates directly to what you're doing.
Well, it does, right? So when you think about education, and we all know that the education is the great equalizer. It is the great, knowledge is power. We learn that from our little Saturday cartoons in the morning. But it's truly understanding where we're headed. And you're right. I mean, when you look back on the horse-drawn carriage, and I know some of our Amish friends still drive that, so if our Amish friends don't take offense to this, who may be watching, but no, advancement will always be there. It will always happen. And how do you prepare for that? And that's what education, it doesn't matter where you get educated. It depends on that you're learning something that is going to be able to take you to the next level. Because if you don't, you're going to be left behind. And, let's all face it, everyone in this room knew we had a telephone back in the day that you connected into a wall and you called people on it. Well, today our phones are our lifeblood. They're computers, they get you dialed into every news feed and everything that you want to do, and you communicate with that. That is more than a telephone ever could be. And how we work on these things and how we manage our lives it's all about a new process or something new you have to learn, that you have to go into the next level with. And computers were the same way, how advancement of computers have done things. So whether you're talking about manufacturing, whether you're talking about healthcare, whatever industry you're talking about, there are advancements, and you have to learn the skills to be able to work in those environments and to have careers in those environments as well. So it's always, and additive is a key example to that, right? So we talk about additive, we talk about getting people dialed into this industry because it's going to continue to expand. In every industry is going to get into additive. So it's knowledge again comes back to I have to continue my skills. It's about lifelong learning to be able to compete and get the new jobs and careers that are out there in the fields.
Holly, I'm going to read the question over again for you. And this, I'm assuming you have people building your work washing stations. Am I correct? So, what skills are critical for the future of our regional manufacturing workforce?
I think discipline is one of them. When it comes to being in a manufacturing field, having people be able to show up on a regular basis is part of that discipline, because it's not something you can work from home and do. You have to be present to do the manufacturing. That's one thing that I think some of the younger people don't always think of. Like the older employees that I've had throughout the years had a very good work ethic, and I think now people want to work smarter, not harder kind of thing, but yet when you have something that you're working with your hands, you have to be disciplined enough to show up and learn that trade and be able to move forward in it. And I think that's very important, along with integrity, because when you're working with a product and you're working and building it from raw materials like we do, and building it from plans that we have, if you make a mistake but don't have the integrity to fix it, and it goes to the next step, and then the next step, and the next step, and then at the very end, there's a problem that could have been fixed way back early in the beginning. Having the integrity, which we stress to our employees, it makes a huge difference in the end product for quality. And I think that is very important. And then also adaptability would be another one, because when you're in manufacturing, adaptability is huge. If you're able to do a job but then see a need that needs to be filled in another place, and we've had cross-trained people throughout our on-the-job trainings forever, and to be able to fill another need is huge, with not just thinking, oh, that's not my job or not my pay grade or whatever it might. People have certain things that they think about, We want people to feel that that's inclusive, because they want to take ownership of all of it, because when they see the end product, that's what matters, that they had a hand in building something that quality. And a lot of these things, discipline, integrity, and adaptability have a lot to do with that.
Let me piggyback that back to you, and then I'm going to go to Barb with the same two questions. How do you see us changing comprehensively as a training force? The training force, also the workforce. Mm-hmm. How do you see us doing that? And that's a culture change, because I agree with you. Yeah. I believe our youth are missing discipline, and I don't think our youth are missing integrity, because what I find is that the youth are actually really good people. If you talk to the youth in our country, their main thing is like, what can we do to help somebody? So I know the integrity's there. I know that the ethical standards there. It's a matter of, I think, teach them how to divert that energy to the right places first. Make your own bed before you start trying to change the world type scenario. So how do you see us as adult leaders changing the young adults coming up? What would your idea of doing that be?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is lead by example, being very communicative with them from the get-go, orientation-wise, getting people onboarded. With the comprehensive leadership, what it boils down to is you're communicating with these employees, and you're letting them know that the standards and the expectations, what they might be a fit, they might not. You find out in that first 30, 60, 90 days pretty quick. And part of that is also, if they're teachable and they want to be there, then you're going to be able to help them into that position, into the expectations, and it will be a win-win for them. It'll be a win-win for you.
Barb, I'm going to reread the question for you because I know it's been a while. What skills are critical for the future of our regional manufacturing workforce? And I'm going to piggyback to, where are we as leaders in implementing that on the way?
So back in the day, Herman Moss, who was one of the former plant managers out at the GM assembly plant, used to say that the future of manufacturing would require at least an associate's degree if you were going to be on the shop floor. That the employees were going to have to understand how the machines not only worked and how to use them, but really the basic functioning of the machines and how to make things better. So I think for me it's about critical thinking skills, and if you can get people to that point where they can see the great, that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and understand where things interact, you start to get a better product, you start to get a better process. If there's an employee who's in a vacuum and they're just touching that one machine all day long and they don't understand how the whole system works, they may not notice that or not know what to do with the fact that parts are coming off that are no longer standard, and they're not really understanding that they could be preventing an injury or a machine going down because they're not seeing the bigger piece of that. So we've got to get our employees to really understand the manufacturing system and how to integrate themselves into that. And on the flip side of that, one of our board members says all the time, innovation happens on the manufacturing floor. That's where things change. And if we want to make our local companies more competitive, we want to get new products, we want those businesses to thrive, those employees have to feel empowered to really go about and make changes that they see can be made. And sometimes that means turning your workforce upside down. It is far more likely that the young kid that just graduated from college is going to understand how and when you could use additive manufacturing to do something than another employer, another engineer that's been there for 30 years and has never touched it. And if you really want to engage young people and get them into the game, you're going to have to trust their gut and give them a little bit of leeway to run with some projects and take their suggestions, at least listen to them seriously. I think that's really empowering when you bring your boss an idea of how to do something better and you let the young kid run with it.
So to answer to that question, summarize, I would say you would say teach and accept critical thinking on both the younger and the older mentor, mentee. And to piggyback that, how do you bridge that gap? How do you counsel the senior worker and the younger worker? How do you set up that relationship to do that?
I think you probably have to. I mean, you may find a situation where magic just happens between two employees, but I bet that it would be more effective and you'd be more likely to get something productive out of it if there was truly a partnership created between 4 people who you brought a diverse group together to look at a specific problem and try to solve it, and make sure that the more senior worker understands that the younger people are valued, and at the same time, how to respect the tried and true traditions of somebody who's probably tried to solve the same problem many times over and has a solid basis of knowledge. So I would think that there's a lot of skills development there, not necessarily education, but just a honing of skills. But I think partnering people up and giving them an opportunity to work on a project would be a great start.
I'm going to spin a third question off that to you, just to you. Have you seen in your experience, and I know you have a lot of it, and that question is, have you seen it backfire, and have you seen that synergy come together?
I can think of a situation where it backfired for unfortunate reasons. It weren't necessarily, a partnership wasn't created, but younger team members were working with older team members, both of whom had additive manufacturing experience. The older team members had an unfortunate experience with it, just had not been a successful project, so they kept stonewalling the younger employees, and eventually the company just walked away from the opportunity entirely, and I think the employees left. If something had intervened in that process and allowed a more open, accepting conversation to happen, maybe at least it wouldn't have been such a broken system.
That's actually, ironically, how Arnold Wealth Management Company has created my former employer, which I won't name, from 2002 to 2004, at which I was an investment advisor at, and they called us investment executives. I was always bringing to the table new ideas, fresh ideas, how we as a firm can get better. And the guy's name was John. I was on branch manager. He has passed away since. He shot me down every time. And I thought, without being conceited, that I thought at least some of the ideas were worth listening to. The irony is I put those ideas into my own business, and I think we've been pretty successful since. But I've been part of that, to where, as you know, trying to tell the supervisor, the person above me, new creative things were just shunned, and they took it as a threat versus a synergy, and the rest is history. So I appreciate you saying that. And
you've led me to remember a story I've heard about Turning Technologies, our largest graduate that developed the handheld audience response systems. Mike Broderick and the other team members were working for an existing company. They took their idea for how they thought things could be better. It wasn't how they did things, as you noted earlier. It just wasn't how things were done. And so their idea was shot down, and during the 2007 recession, they created a startup that became wildly successful and did great things because their ideas were shot down internally.
And as they say, they laughed all the way to the bank.
Yeah.
Literally. All right. Holly, I'm going to start with you on this. How do you account for different learning styles and habits of your employees?
How do I account for them? When we have people that come in and they're interviewing, and then we hire them, we have in mind who we're going to put them with for on-the-job training, because people come to us in our manufacturing. We make sure there's certain basic skills that are in place, and then from that point, we know that there's a few people senior people in our organization that we would pair them up with, and that has always been successful for us because there's some shadowing involved. There's then they're doing, and then the senior person is watching, and then they're on their own, and that's over a process of time, along with some sit down and let them know exactly the process and the whys. You always have to make sure that they have the whys down, because everything else makes a lot more sense when you have the whys.
Art, how do you account for different learning styles and habits of your employees?
So, it's always having an expectation set first. Knowing what is expected is the most important thing when we start talking to a new employee coming in. And once you have that expectation and you see some faltering, or you see some areas that they're not strong at, then we do sit down. We do have directors, and we have program chairs, and we've got deans, and we've got vice presidents and the like, that everybody can sit down and have that open dialogue with those individuals, and really making sure that what skills they need to have is to meet the expectations of the organization. And having that open dialogue, having the freedom to be able to share and express what you need to express, and say, hey, listen, I don't know why this isn't working for me, but let's find a way to make it work. We do that on a regular basis here. We do it on our academics team. We do weekly calls with our adjunct faculty, our full-time faculty, our staff. We do monthly staff meetings. So we know where the bar is. We always, if anybody doesn't know, we've obviously raised that bar significantly at Eastern Gateway, but we set the expectation. So and bring people along with you. And I think that's the idea. Like even if anybody new coming into this is not a traditional college model. So you're looking at it differently, and you have to get people's mindsets to understand that this is a different way of executing an education business model. So getting them understanding and then getting their skills where they need to be is definitely what we do on a regular basis. It's constant training, it's constant mentoring, and our growth has shown that it's working. The process is working.
Students, right? 50,000?
50,000 students.
That's some growth.
Yeah,
I'm
that
being
is growth.
facetious. That's
Largest community college in the country. So I mean,
that.
there's a reason why.
Right in our
and we
backyard.
think outside the box.
That's beautiful.
I have a practical question to add on to this. So regarding learning styles, there's reading, audio, and visual. Practically speaking, we probably most often find an article we read and forward. But what if your team member is an audio-based or a video-based learner? Do you let them take the time during the workday to consume that content, and then how do you test and make sure that they're immersed in that content? Versus, it's easy to flip articles at somebody all day long. What's the practical solution there?
Go ahead, Barb. She can't wait to no, I might put her on the spot.
I think at this point, if you're not willing to accept that, especially young people, but everybody, are going to be watching videos at least some part of their day to try to figure something out, you are not living in the same world I'm living in. I mean, everybody I know figures out how to do something new on YouTube, at least once a month, something completely outside the box that you would never expect them to do. And it's a completely viable way to learn, and it's much easier for most people, including myself, than trying to read the instructions and figure out where part A goes into and what part B actually even is. So it really is freeing for so many people to be able to catch a YouTube video to figure something out. I'm sure I continue to forward articles on as well. I am absolutely positive that I do, but you'd probably be better served sending on a video link.
Mm-hmm. Holly, do you have people on the shop floor that are literally, they have their phone up and they're trying to fit a part and they're watching a YouTube video sometimes?
Now, not usually with that, but a lot of times it's just, when we talk about different aspects of where people are going to be located and what materials they're going to be working with and what kind of equipment they're using, we give them, we talk to them about the practical side of it, and we also have the side where you're going to give them some material they're going to read, but most of it is the visual. The visual of seeing it, hearing somebody talk to them about it, and safety is the biggest aspect there also. So when it comes to safety, we have monthly safety meetings, toolbox talks during the week. Then also have annual reviews of all of our OSHA programs that we do. So it keeps people in the know. And sometimes they get repetitive, but it's important to be repetitive because I think that's one of the key things in manufacturing is just keeping it in front of them. It makes a huge difference, and whether it's even a ladder situation or just actual tools, you want them to be comprehensive for all of it. Yeah.
I'm going to reply just from pure candor. Our model is so fast, and the way we do things is like it's like brain surgery. You can't miss a T being crossed or an I being dotted because you can cost someone millions of dollars by putting the wrong number or letter in the system. So I never have, to be honest with you, I never have time to allow somebody to research something or audio learn something. If that is the case, they need to pass a test or they need to learn something. We just give them the day off or a couple of days off and say, concentrate on that. We'll see when you get back. But the demand is, you better know when you get back. So I think the answer to your question, Jeff, from my side of things, and just comprehensively, I use that word a lot today, is it applies to really different occupations. Like if you're a surge tech and you're helping a surgeon in surgery, they're doing brain surgery, there's no such thing as, well, let me go take a break to figure out how we can use this instrument, right? Usually the medical device salesperson's with them and they're teaching them how to use an instrument, on-the-job training, but there really isn't this time period of patience to where, well, we're going to take it and learn it. So I think it's a case per case scenario, is what I think it is. That's my answer to that question. Do you want to add anything to that, Art?
No, I think you know, and we have people doing things and training online all the time. So there's always virtual informational things that we can look at and teach things. And so I mean, it's out there, it's available to us, and I think a lot of students and a lot of individuals want to learn that way instead of really doing it, you know, by hand or reading a piece of paper, because they do not want to read a piece of paper. They want to see it, visualize it, and make it happen.
So I'm hearing structured learning, like literally take this block, do nothing else, and learn it. And you know, it's not in the flow of the day, or so to speak, but it almost has to be scheduled, structured, focused, dedicated learning, so you can't really learn on the fly.
Well, I'd say it's occupation per occupation. In my industry, or I would say the health field or whatever, you know, the speed and the need for instantaneous results on something doesn't allow for that. But I'm sure Holly and Barb's organization, and especially Art's, does allow for time to say, hey, listen, go take 20 minutes and learn this from this or that, or ask this person or call this person, and let's get this perfect, versus, you know, just get it done right now. My point to that is I think it's per occupation. That's what I think. That's my opinion. I wanted to piggyback the term you use the term, and this is something that I always use with our staff meetings, is expectations. The expectations at our firm are unrealistic, and that's perfection. I tell the ladies every day, and now we have a couple gentlemen that work with us, should say is, you know, we don't get to overcook the steak on our industry, and we are doing brain surgery every day. Now, Nisa's, I'm an investment firm, so we're not doing brain surgery. But the message to them is we don't have time, nor do we have the leeway to accidentally say, oh, we put, instead of XYZ for that buy of in a stock, we put ZZZ instead by accident. The problem is humans are humans. They're going to make mistakes. But we're always shooting for perfection. And then I say we don't get to overcook the steak, because you know firsthand, Art, if you overcook a steak at a restaurant, the manager comes out with a new steak that's cooked to perfection and says, sorry, we're going to comp you a dessert.
Yeah, right.
In my world, there is no overcooking the steak.
Right.
You lose some millions of dollars because you made a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
It's some pain.
Right.
So my expectations for my staff are unrealistic, but they're perfection. Now, me knowing that it's not a perfect world and that people aren't perfect, we shoot for perfection because we think if we're shooting there, then we're going to try it. We're going to be close to that. With that comes compensation for those expectations. I can't just pay somebody minimum wage to be perfect, right, or to try to be perfect. So how I turn my statement into a question is how do you lay out? This goes for all three of you. Whoever wants to take the question first, please do. The expectations, what they are, and how do you help your teammates, your employees meet those expectations? What are the tools you use?
Well, I know for
Holly?
For the manufacturing, for what we do, and we get people, when they come on board, you know, there's a discussion, their abilities, then there's a pay rate set, and we're looking at, okay, you have some time here to show us, you know, are you as good as you say you are? Are you meeting the expectations we put out there for those expectations? If they exceed those, they know that there'll be compensation for exceeding those, and they have room to grow. And so again, communicating that to them, letting them know that that there is places to go from there, that is a very positive thing for the employee standpoint. And one of the best things that I have seen is, you know, and my husband and I, you know, when you can reward somebody and then they give you some feedback, then we can adjust also on our end to say, you know what, there's some changes that we can make. We're always open to that. We're just as teachable as we expect somebody else to be. And we set a bar pretty high. It can't be perfection, you know, but it's close to it as, you know, as much as we can. And I think that's what people do look for. You give them that bar and they want to shoot for something. They don't want to go for status quo if you give them and communicate an expectation of that.
And you're right. And I think when you set that early expectation out there, but you also have to have systems in place for them to be able to meet those expectations. You know, and I will tell you from a perspective of where we were 5 years ago to today, That's no easy task, because when you have that rapid of growth, the whole thing shifts on a daily, a monthly. Like boom, we're at 5,000. Now we're at 10,000 students. We got to get schedules. We have to have the right IT. There's so many different components that go into that. So we can have the expectation, but we also got to say you have to be mobile to change quickly, and then having those pathways set up so those people can create success for themselves and create meeting those expectations. That with fast growth, that's very challenging, not only on management's level, but on the employee level as well. So yeah, I think it's a balance. We always go back to that balance. Okay, we have these expectations, basic expectations: come into work, show up, do this, do that. But when we talk about expectations about how we execute our business model, when that's constantly shifting and changing, you got to make sure that your employees have the support from everyone around them to be able to meet those expectations. So it's on both ends. We set the expectations, but we better make sure we have the operation to make them successful. And that's no easy task when growth comes around, right? So and entrepreneurs face that every day, right?
Got to be able to shift.
And you're setting them up for success, not failure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Are you want to add anything to that, Barb?
We start very early in the process. Well, let me say it a different way. We start with setting our expectations for what our environment is like, what our organization is like, what they should expect in terms of the pace of programming, and I mean, we are a whirlpool of activity sometimes. And so even at the very first interview, we are very clear with people what they will be walking into and what the demands are going to be on them, and just making sure that we're being candid. In many cases, people are changing jobs, or they're making a step in their life that they might not otherwise make if they fully understand what type of what the expectations are. And I don't think we're in any way, shape, or form negative about it. We're just very candid about it. We've had enough experience where people felt like they didn't fully understand what the job description was going to be and what the demands were going to be. So from the very first interview and from the onboarding point throughout, we make sure that everybody understands the role that they've accepted or the role that they're interested in, and what we're going to need from them for everybody to be successful, and what we'll provide back to them to help make them successful.
What training group I wish I could go in behind the scenes and uncover is, what is Chick-fil-A doing to program, for lack of better words, that's a terrible word to use, but that's the one I know of, their employees very, very rarely slip up. I mean, it's almost like a machine. You get cruise ship service for a $5 chicken sandwich and fries. Then you'll go to XYZ Gourmet Restaurant and feel like you're bothering the server. They're doing something operational-wise to meet those, to say, I know you're only getting paid $12 an hour, but here's our expectations. There is a gap somewhere on their training and that I'm looking for to learn from. I won't mention names, but Art and I worked in the restaurant industry together. You wouldn't believe what it goes into get a table from the hostess to checking out on the bill, like all the moving pieces that have to come together just to get a meal served, from somebody sitting down to them leaving the restaurant with wanting to come back. Would you agree with that?
I would agree, and what I'd add on to that is it's your processes that you have in place. Once you get a solid process and you get people trained to understand that process, and it's in any business. I mean, I know you're mentioning restaurants, but man, oh man, if you can have a process that everybody identifies with and can execute, and you minimize the foul-ups that could occur through repetition, that's what you get. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you remember, McDonald's was the staple years and years and years ago. And again, I don't want to call out any industry or any company, but again, I think service has dropped compared to that. And then you compare it to a Chick-fil-A that says, okay, here's our process, these are our expectations, you find the right leaders, and we talk about leadership in here, the right leaders to execute that in every one of their units. I'm sure they have their mistakes and orders. I'm sure but they minimize those, yes. Right? When you can minimize those, then that's when you have a successful concept. And I think that's the idea. Put your process in place, people to manage it, people that buy into the concept, and then minimize, any bad issue that could occur.
So I would say that all of us are coming to the conclusion, I'm summarizing, it's a culture thing of
Definitely
expectations.
culture. Absolutely.
And then combine that with a blueprint of processes that are executing at an A level. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I agree with the process entirely. It's something that we constantly are looking to improve upon internally. Definitely not always cookie cutter programming to try to implement. But I think equally important is that culture issue. Your employees, if they feel like this is a good place to work, I like my coworkers, I think my boss has invested me, and I feel like I matter to this team and I belong to this team, that extra mile is a lot easier to get to than for somebody who just walks in and is collecting a paycheck. I think it's really important for your employees to feel like you are vested in them.
And that is huge. I think I took from a long time ago. I used to work in the hospital, and there was protocols in place because the protocols gave you that flow chart, so to speak, of certain scenarios. But then you took your education and then you filled in the gaps to make it more direct, patient to patient. You could take that whole thing with protocols and processes and then implement it like in a manufacturing. You have different areas where you have a process for each one of these particular what you're building at this place, what you're welding over in this area, what the final product cleanup is. I mean, as long as those processes are in place, people feel comfortable because they know what's going to happen next, why it's going to happen next. And then you have the people that's been there long enough because they've been part of that process and fill in that gaps on that level of leveling up, I guess you would say, to make that whole process doable, but also then to excellence. And then people will also see the people that's been there doing it to excellence and rise to that also. In my opinion, I think when you have great people in that process, it creates other great people along the way, working.
Would you agree with this? So there's something that is so disheartening and frustrating as a consumer for me to when somebody's employee screws up and the manager, whether I'm buying a widget or a lawn service or a restaurant situation, they tell me, well, they apologize and they tell me, oh, well, it's a training situation. It's a way for us to improve, which is true. But I don't want to be the test tube as a consumer. And that drives me crazy. That to me is a lack of processes and a lack of leadership. And I don't blame the employee. I blame the the manager above that employee and the CEO. Your expectations were here. You don't have the critical process in place here. What am I missing at? That tells me a lot in terms of the owner or the CEO is there for the paycheck versus the operation itself. And I'm more asking than telling. And would you agree with that statement, or you think I'm overbearing with thinking that? What do you think about that?
No, I think that's a fair statement to say, because those expectations, if your CEO and if your leadership are not making sure that these expectations are met, then what you're going to have on the production floor or in an entrepreneurial setting or anywhere, you're going to have disruption constantly. You're going to always have conflict because somebody's not managing that as well. Now, you want to empower your employees, obviously, to make decisions and do things, but from a service perspective, and let's go back to the restaurant industry for just a second. You need to anticipate as well as understand processes. And if I know something's going south, how do I right that ship pretty quick? And again, you went back to if my steak's overcooked and I'm giving a dessert and I'm giving a new meal and so you again go back to Chick-fil-A. You need to minimize that, and you manage that from above. You manage that through people, and managers have to understand expectations as well as the individuals that are working on the floor of any organization. And it is. And I'll tell you, I was just with Mr. Cavelli, and I got to tell you, he said right before we were leaving, he said, I'd rather be at my facilities, my units, out there making sure everything is being managed properly than be in the office with meetings. And that's a true leader in my eyes, is guess what? He needs to be where his operations are because he knows that's the critical piece to his business. The operations can handle themselves. We've got accountants, we've got HR, we've got all these, but he needs to be in the operations, and he leads by example. And that's one of the things that you can see most people leading by example. We talked about it earlier. You talked about it and you mentioned it. Bottom line is, if you're out there and you have set those expectations, and you're doing exactly what your line cooks are doing or your bakery folks are doing, and you'll put an apron on just to make sure things don't fall apart, that to me is setting the expectations of what this organization is going to look like and having the right culture in place. So yes, I would agree with you.
Anybody else want to add to that before I go on to another one? No? Yeah, I think kind of between Art and I, we took that one away.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's good. That's good.
I want to throw in, where does creativity come in? Where does breaking process to come up with innovation? So what's the role of innovation? I hear institutional talk. Where does innovation come in?
Well, I think yours is talking about like 1, 3, 5 year goals. I think yours is probably more board meetings / executive leadership. In some ways, stepping up as an executive and saying, I think the way we're doing this process stinks, and this is why, and this is and this is how we solve it. I think there's a place and time for that. I think I'm talking about the day-to-day operations of a lot of businesses now, where good enough is good enough. Like in my firm, good enough is not good enough. It gets you fired. The enemy of great is good. I believe in that, and I think that from my experience, and just especially since COVID, something has happened to where people are just giving up from a leadership standpoint and from an ownership standpoint, from a GM standpoint. And not me, I refuse to settle. And I find myself getting more frustrated by the week because I'm thinking, where, as a manager and as a CEO and as an owner, where is your pride? Your name is on that sandwich, your name is on that drywall, your name is on that painting, your name is on whatever it is you're producing, your name is on that. I don't want somebody getting a statement or an experience from my staff saying, I went into Jon Wealth Management and they didn't even as much greet me, they could care less if I was there, and by the way, the results sucked. Like I would want to crawl into a hole. I would want to kill myself. Like that would keep me up at night for a year. And that's what we're leading to. So the demands and expectations of my firm are excellency, the standard of excellence, and if you're not performing that, then you're not part of my team. That used to be the standard, and that's the frustration from the operation. Now, I will tell you, I know the least amount about paperwork and operations at our firm, and my general manager, her name is Jennifer, who's amazing, knows the most. And if she came to me and said, John, what you originally taught me was doing great, but now here's how we can minimize the time we're spending, here's how we can minimize the mistakes, here's how we can make the employees and the clients happier, I'm all ears. Like I can't wait for her to sign up.
So let me say this, to be real, let's talk about restaurants. How do you put up with good enough versus shutting down? I was at a restaurant a week or two ago. I could see the back door of the kitchen from where I was on the patio. 2 guys rolled out and were fighting.
Oh.
This one guy clocked the other guy, got on top of him, and was pounding him. Right? 2 kitchen staff
Very
members got in a
unprofessional,
fight.
yeah.
So
Crazy, right? And I'm, hey, cut that out. And this other guy jumped over the
guys
railing.
stop that.
It was a whole situation.
Now.
But then the owner came back, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I can't believe it. And the kitchen staff, if I don't have at a minimum just people washing dishes, I have to shut down. So I have to deal with this. I'm sorry, I'm going to buy you a drink, da-da-da-da-da. That's what I'm really seeing there, right? So expectations, yes,
Things that
yes,
you
all
never
day
imagined
long.
5 years ago are commonplace now.
There's a lot of weird stuff
I agree
happening.
with this.
But how do
Okay.
you not shut down?
Well, and right now I've seen people say, okay, I can't do curbside service because I have 1 person on the bar, 1 person serving, and 2 cooks. And that's, they can't, so they've minimized. And if they're not seating every single place, every table in there, they'll manage it by who's there. So if they're managing it and people, like instead of sitting down and waiting a half an hour to 30 minutes for somebody to walk over and say, can I get you some waters? They're having them, listen, you're gonna have a 30-minute wait, but we'll get you seated if you're okay with that. That I see. Now, but if somebody just seats a whole restaurant and then just can't get to it, and people are so frustrated because, again, expectations, we talk about That doesn't fly, and that's going to cause people to exactly do that, shut down. You know, it's one of the things where, unfortunately, in this situation, you don't have the employees to fill these spots, and so they suffer. The business will suffer
So
because
it's almost like you have to scale back and constrain
Which
as
is
much
why-
as
yeah.
you can, right?
Right, when you, and I used to work work in a restaurant. I did a lot of waitressing. I thought I was a doggone good waitress. But what it was is if you have a ton of people waiting and you only have 3 waitresses on the floor, you do what you can on the floor, and people actually are okay with waiting. You know, and if they're not, then they have that expectation, well, I might go somewhere else, but that's okay because you know they're not mad at you on the floor, you know, or sitting at their table waiting for somebody to bring a margarita to them or whatever it might be, you know, but literally expectations again in that situation make a huge difference. You scale it back.
To answer your question from a real standpoint, I don't think there's a square hole. I don't. I think we're operationally dysfunctional until we get past this COVID crisis. Because here's the deal. You can't make money in a restaurant paying more than X amount of dollars. Right now with, you know, I'm trying to keep away from any kind of political discussion here, but right now people are getting excessive funding from government funding, and they're saying, does it make sense for me to go to work? A restaurant can only make money paying servers half of a minimum wage because they make tips. A line cook can only make so much. Executive chef can only make so much because it's at the end of the day that no one's talking about. You're in business to make money. That's a very hard thing to do. Run a business, and it's extremely hard to get profit out of the business. So it comes down to if you're also washing dishes and serving the tables and hosting, and you're the owner, and then additionally you're managing the employees. There's a time and place where you say the balance sheet and the income sheet is at a negative. Is this worth it? And that's the paradigm, that's the crossroads that we're at. But back to your original question, because I think we have time for one more, just my finalization is I think there's a time and place for operational excellence and training and expectations. And then there's a time and place at the boardroom or the executive meeting to say to each executive, what do you have for us as far as getting creative, better execution, better this, better that. So I think they're segmented is my opinion. This is a really, really good one, and this bridges to what we were just talking about. What are your thoughts on investing in training team members only to be picked off by the competition, and how do you alleviate that? That's a very tough question. That's a tougher answer, and I'm going to go to Miss Ewing for that.
Oh man, you're probably starting in the wrong place there. So we've had, in the last few years, 2 very good employees who have both left YBI to go work for partner organizations. And I would say that we're fortunate enough that both of those employees left with goodwill, and it has strengthened the relationship with the other organization. And overall, it made for what I'll call a net plus instead of a net negative. But it is very hard for small organizations to keep up with the payroll and benefits of larger organizations. So really your only option is to make it the best work environment possible. And you're not going to be competing dollar for dollar, but for the kind of place that somebody wants to work. And we do our best to try to be that place where people like to work, because it's a great environment, we're a family, flexible as we possibly can be, and doing great things, and people feel good about working there.
Excellent answer. Art, you going to take that one?
I would agree. I mean, I think what Barb just said was you're going to lose people. There's no really getting around that. But how do you turn that into a positive is partner with them later on. Find some common ground that, you know, if someone leaves here and goes to another institution, well, guess what? Now we have maybe some articulation agreements that we could do now that person's there that maybe we weren't getting before. So find a way to find collaboration from those when people do leave, and then maybe that creates opportunities for your organization later on down the line. That's, to me, the best strategy to approach it, because you are going to lose people no matter what.
Listening to Barb talk about making your environment, that place that you're at, the best it can be, the culture of where they're working, the attitudes, the best it can be is what you can do. It's the only thing you can do, because I mean, I do national business, but I'm a small organization right now, and it doesn't mean that I can compete with some of these larger places, but on that level, I can do the best I can and be the best we can be and make them feel as welcome and have it to be a fun place to be.
The answer is kind of in the question itself. You said, what are your thoughts on investing in training team members? You know going in, when you get the superstar employee and you're training them, that ultimately, if someone has bigger pocketbooks in a state away or in a city away, you might lose them. And you're right, so you have to build this culture of positivity, success, almost like it hurts the employee more to leave you than it would hurt them. But I'll be the first one to tell you, this has happened to me over the past 21 years. We've lost people that I've loved, that I've, for lack of better words, I've grown up from, I've trained them from a young, just immature business person into a superstar that could go into any company and just run it like a clock. And when they come and have that heart-to-heart discussion with me, I'm both happy and sad at the same time. And my heart hurts, that's the truth. But I will tell you that, I try to do the little things in my culture, like when someone has a birthday at our firm, we all go out for lunch. When someone goes for vacation and say their vacation starts on Tuesday and it ends on next Tuesday, I'll send them home Monday in the middle of the day, as early, to just say, hey, listen, there's some extra time for packing. Little pat on the back, want to tell you I appreciate you, and this is how I'm showing it. If we as a team, my bonuses at our company are very big, but they're very number oriented. If my team has done everything they humanly can to hit that goal, and they've done above and beyond, and we miss it maybe by a couple thousand, they don't know at the time that I'm writing the checks anyway, because I don't want sour grapes. So it's the little things, and it goes hand in hand with everything you just said. It's the little things. It's the culture. It's creating such a work environment where even if that company writes a $20,000 or more a year check than you can as a small business owner, maybe it's the little things that keep them there. And here's the opposite. I take a little bit of pride in that someone's leaving the nest for my firm, that they're going to kick ass. Like they are going and they're going to say, Jon Arnold and his team taught me how to do this way, and they're going to show out, and it brings goosebumps to my arms talking about it, because I've had that happen, to where a former employer has called and said, whatever you're doing, I want to learn how to do it. And honestly, it's 95% the employee and 5% the training, but what a compliment. So I guess what I'm saying is...
So if I can add one more thing to that, John. If you look around this table, all of us are not with the organization that we started with at age 21. So we all know, we've all gone through it. We've all left the nest. So, and again, our first corporations were never our landing place, in an environment where change is constant. We just try to do the best we can in those environments to make sure people are learning and training, because we want to give back to those people that we started with, and we reflect on those moments of learning, because we know change is constant.
It's true. Overcome and adapt, like the military. So I'll end with this. Thank you very much for your time. Jeff, Barb, Art, Holly, you're all champions of our community. Your leadership's second to none. It's an honor to be in the same room with you and have this discussion. And I thank you for your time, and I wish you a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
For having us.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching the video. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that little bell for notifications. And also make sure to connect with us on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. For all of your business news, visit businessjournaldaily.com. For all of your arts and entertainment news, go to afterhoursyoungstown.com.